Hello and welcome to my 21st video lesson in using Blender 2.6. This is going to be my second video in using cloth in Blender 2.6. So in the first video we covered how to simulate cloth using a flat sheet subdivided up. So I'm going to quickly go over that, talk about a few more things, and we'll make a flag, an animated flag blowing in the wind and being drawn up along a flagpole. So let's get started. First thing we do is we add a plane. That's going to be our cloth. You can make something that has 3 dimensions, like a piece of clothing. That can be cloth as well. But in this case, we're just going to use a plane. I'm going to turn on my screen capture keys so that you can see what I'm pressing most of the time. There we go. And so I'm going to press S and scale up my plane 5 times. And because it is just 4 edges, 1 face, and 4 vertices, we're going to go into edit mode and subdivide it up with the W key and subdivide and turn it up to 10. That's not quite enough, so I'm going to press W again and subdivide it up twice more. So now we have a 30 by 30 sheet. In the last video, we subdivided, or we simulated cloth rather, over a UV sphere. This time we're going to subdivide, or simulate rather, over a cube. So let's go ahead and add a cloth physics to the plane. So over in the physics tab, I'm gonna, with the plane selected, I'll press cloth, and with the cube selected, I will press collision, because you need to add collision physics to an object in order for the cloth to be affected by it. So back to our plane. I'm actually gonna make my cube a little bit bigger, just because I've tried this out before and that seems to be a little bit different. Okay, so let's go ahead and make our cloth a preset. Let's do maybe cotton this time. Cotton's a very common one. Let's go ahead and go down to our cloth collision and enable self collision so that the cloth won't actually go through itself when it kind of hangs below the cube and folds in when it swings in. And so I think that's pretty much good. Let's go ahead and press Alt A and see how it goes. So it's looking pretty good. We do have some corners peeking out of the cube. I'm going to stop this simulation at 120. In fact, right about there. Okay, good. You'll see that my cache filled up. That blue line is my cache, which means it's the memory that stores the simulation. If I want to make this simulation, which I can scrub through, and hopefully, as long as I don't go beyond the edge of that, it normally won't erase my cache or try to resimulate. Now if I go down into my cloth cache area in the physics tab with my cloth selected, I can bake this cache, which means make it permanent, but I can always free the bake as well. So I'll press current cache to bake, and now I get the free bake option, but because it's baked, the blue line turned a little bit darker, and now I'm free to do whatever I want with that cloth, and it's kind of permanent. Let's go ahead and go back to the beginning and turn that cube into a different, or give it a material. So we can actually see it a little bit better when it's mixed in with the cloth. So let's just give it a bright color. Turn on specular, and let's see what this is doing. So let's kind of go through, and as you can see, I chose this cube and I made it a little bit bigger because I wanted us to have some problems with the cloth being penetrated by the cube. So that's a problem. Obviously, what we could do is resimulate and change some of our options. So I'm going to go back to the beginning. With the cloth selected, I will go to my physics tab, and I'm going to free this bake, which means that we can now resimulate it. So there we go. And let's go ahead and change some of our properties. We can either change our collision bounds on the cloth itself or on the collision object. I might suggest doing it on the collision object, partly because it's a simpler object, but I also didn't talk about this in the last video, so if we select the collision object and then go to the physics tab under collision, we can now change the amount that it or the distance. Now it's not actually there, so I'm guessing that means that those options are only available in the cloth. So let's go back to the cloth, and I'm going to go down to cloth collision. And so we've kind of figured out here that the distance, it looks like, is only available in the cloth and not the collision object. So, sorry about that. Okay, so let's change the distance. I'm going to change it from 0.015, which means that the collision will occur and the cloth will kind of drape over the cube at a distance of 0.015 away. Why doesn't it just drape right on top of it? Well, that enables more problems, or that results in more problems. So we will just change it to 1. Now 1's a really big number. Obviously it was 0.015 before, but we've changed it to 1 just to kind of illustrate what's going to happen here. I'm going to start my cloth a little bit higher up, and I'll press Alt-A to simulate. And as you can see, with a distance of 1, which is obviously from ooh, what's going on here? Z. Okay, let's press Alt-A again. It's that's not going to show it to me either. Okay, it's just going to drape 1 away from the cube. So the cube is actually being really made a lot bigger, or the distance is 1, therefore the cloth will drape 1 around all of the cube in every direction. Obviously that's not very good. It needs to be a lot smaller than that. I'll press Escape to stop simulating. And we'll change that distance to, it was 0.015 before. Let's change it to 0.025, let's say, and let's try resimulating. So Alt-A. And kind of the benchmark here is if you're happy with it, and if the cloth doesn't penetrate through, or the cube doesn't penetrate through the cloth. So we've gotten to about a frame 100 or so, so I'll press Escape, and let's see what's going on here. Does the cube penetrate through? No, it does not. Now, this isn't the only way of fixing this problem. In fact, what I'm going to do is I'm going to change my distance down to the 0.015 again, and we will resimulate, and we'll rebake again, and I'll fix it a different and somewhat easier way. So we're still getting those same 2 corners poking out. I happened to try this before, and the cloth didn't actually do too badly when the cube was its default size, just because of the alignment of the faces and the size of the cube. It worked really well with the default cube size and the 30 by 30 plane, but I wanted it to give us some problems, so I changed the size of my cube. Okay, so I'm going to leave it like that and press Current Cache to bake that. And let's go ahead and make our cloth smooth. And let's go ahead and add the solidify modifier. So under the wrench tab, you add a modifier. You'll notice that, of course, the cloth modifier was applied when you added the cloth physics to the piece of cloth. So I'll add the solidify modifier, which of course gives us some thickness to our cloth. And that's all good and great, but what we can actually do is, it didn't quite cover up the corner sticking out. What we can actually do is change the offset amount, which will actually make the cloth move and go out or go in, depending on the normals of the cloth. Now, what normals are, it's kind of difficult to explain. It's basically the direction of each individual face, or each individual vertex of the mesh. So if you think about every vertex and the way that it's facing, it's not going in both sides. It's not two-sided. It really has a face and a backside. And so every face, in other words, has a direction that it's facing. And so what the solidify modifier can do, or the offset, it will make the object go out towards the way that it's facing. So every face in this cloth will move outwards. So if I move the offset, right now it's at 0 or -1. If I move it up, you'll see that the cloth gets bigger. I can only go to an offset of 1. I'm not really sure what that 1 is. It's not a 1 blender unit, but that's as far as it can go. And then I can change the thickness of my cloth a little bit, and that will hide the corners of my cube. Of course, now I can go ahead and add a subdivision surface modifier, which will make my cloth look all nice and pretty. I'm going to go ahead and change my view to 2. 2 isn't going to quite do it for us. We're still getting some of these weird normal shading artifacts. So we have to actually turn it up to 3, which could do damage if you're using a slower computer or just make Blender crash. Okay, that is that. I'm going to go ahead and go File New. and we're going to make a flag. So one different thing about making a flag is that it needs to be affected by the wind. So we're going to add a new plane, and I made it a little bit higher up. I'll go to my top view. I'm going to scale this to be about the size of the aspect ratio of a flag, so right about there. Maybe I'll make this whole thing a little bit bigger as well. It's a little bit wide. Okay, now if I just did a W, so I pressed W and subdivide, and I made my cuts. Oops, I didn't have everything selected. Maybe I'll just select the face. Maybe I'll undo a few times. I'm not quite sure if I messed that up. Okay, W and subdivide. If I just did W subdivide, it would make rectangular faces as well, because the subdividing it equally makes the same shape or aspect ratio of faces as your entire object. So I'm going to undo that. And instead I'm going to use my loop cut, which is Control R. And now if I hover over, I guess I need to have my, there we go, Control R. And that gives me that purple pink line. And if I scroll my mouse wheel up, you will see that the number of cuts increases. Now, I can move my mouse around and that'll change direction, but let's just do one direction at a time. The nice thing about using Control R loop cut is that you can go unlimited, or essentially unlimited amount of times, or create an unlimited amount of cuts. So let's go about as high as we want, right about there, and I'll click. And now we're going to do Control R again and scroll up again. And I'm just going to kind of eyeball it so that we have approximate squares. It's either going to be about that one or that one. I think that's just about right. Those look like little squares to me. So now, let's actually just kind of check that out. It's a little bit taller than it is wider, but that's okay. I'm not too concerned about that. Okay, so to make a flag, it's not just going to be a piece of cloth. It needs to be attached on one side to the flagpole, or to the rigging of the flagpole, like little loops, etc. So how that can be done is, well, let's go ahead and first make this object, this flag, into cloth. And we don't really need that cube, so I'll go ahead and delete it. And of course, if I simulate this right now, it will just fall straight down. What we need to do is we need to pin one of these sides, and we're going to kind of have a hanging cloth, so it's not going to be straight up and down at first. We will change it to that, but at first we're just going to have it like a vertical rather than a horizontal hanging flag. So we want to glue either, I'm going to go into edit mode, either all of these vertexes along one side. I held Alt while I right clicked on that edge to select the edge. Alt right click. We want to glue all those down, or we just want to glue all of maybe just the corners down. So maybe those three and those three. Let's see what happens when we do that. So to glue or pin some vertexes down so that they kind of stay in the same spot, we can do that. In other words, we're going to be creating a group of vertexes that will not be affected by the cloth simulation. But all the vertexes around it still will be affected by the cloth simulation. So to do that, we're going to go to our Object Data tab with our cloth in edit mode with our vertexes selected. And we're going to make a new group of vertexes. Now there is a section under this Object Data tab, which is a little triangle called Vertex Groups. And so we're going to press plus. That's going to create a new group. We can name the group. So we're going to call it, I'll call it Steve, because Steve is a nice name. And I'm going to assign these vertexes to the group Steve, which right now has absolutely nothing in it. It has no vertexes in it at all. So I'm going to press assign with those vertexes selected. And now if I press A to deselect them, and now with Steve selected, I'm going to check to see that those vertexes are in fact a part of that group. So I will press select, and it'll select Steve, and in this case we assigned those vertexes to Steve. Okay, that seemed a little bit weird. Why would he call it Steve? I don't know. We just did. Okay, let's go back to the physics tab. And now, if we go down to our, let's find it. I'm not quite sure where it is. It might be under cloth. Yes, it is. There is a little checkbox called pinning. And under pinning, as soon as we check it, this entry box here becomes available. And this little icon right here means vertex group. It's a bunch of little dots, little vertexes. And when we click in that box, we get a list of all the vertex groups that we've created. We've only created one, and it's called Steve, so I'll click on Steve. And now that is pinned. And maybe you'll look under it, and you'll find a stiffness number. And it goes from stiffness can be 0 all the way to 1 or anywhere in between. And what stiffness means is how pinned it is, how solid or how stiff that pinning is. If it's at 1, that means it's going to stay exactly where it is as long as the cloth isn't pulled away from that point by some external force, like something other, some cloth pinned or some vertex is pinned to something else, that's pulling it away. Which gets kind of complicated, but that's okay. So in other words, right now we have those 6 vertexes named Steve pinned completely to thin air, but they're still pinned there. So if I press Alt-A to simulate, you'll see that those vertexes stayed in the exact same spot, and the cloth still simulated, and it looks really good. You'll notice that the cloth drapes a little bit in the middle because we have a cloth preset of cotton. If I change that to let's say rubber, well, you know how that will act. Let's try it with rubber. And it acts a little bit differently. It sags a little bit more in the middle. And rubber is heavier, so it swung a little bit more. And I'm going to even stretch some as well, because it's rubber. Okay, so we want to be a flag that's horizontal instead of vertical. So let's go ahead and go to my side view. So I'll press 3. And we're going to rotate it so it's facing front and back. But if I press R and then 90, that will rotate at 90 degrees. So now I have a 90 degree or a horizontal flag. So now if I resimulate, Alt-A, you will see that my simulation works. Now that was on the same side that I was expecting, but that's quite alright. And it's a rubber flag, so it's acting quite differently than if it was made of a silk. It is not, or it actually went through itself, which is interesting. Let's see if we have cloth collision turned on. No, we don't have self collision turned on. Let's go ahead and turn that on. And let's press Alt-A and see what happens. So now we can see that self collision is working for the most part. I would suppose if I turn the quality up, it would improve that. Let's go ahead and turn quality up to maybe 3. And I'm going to turn it away from rubber because that is giving it a lot of mass, a lot of force to go through itself. Let's change it to silk, if my computer lets me. And press Alt-A to simulate. That looks pretty good. Now, we want some wind. So what I'm going to do, first is I'm going to add a flagpole. So I'll press Alt-A. In fact, what I'll do, not Alt-A, just to add, I'm going to put my 3D cursor right about where I want the flagpole to be. I'll check it from the top as well. Right about there-ish. And I'm going to press Shift-A, not Alt-A. Shift-A is add. And I'm going to add a cylinder right about there. And it's way too big, of course, so I'm going to scale it down. Let's look at our flag. That's about the right width, so I'll press S, then Z, and then I'll press maybe 30 to make it 30 times as long. That's way too short, so I'll press S, then maybe 2. Doesn't really matter. Actually, S, then Z, then 2. There, that'll scale it up only on the Z axis. Then I'll press G and Z, so now I'm only moving it on the Z axis, or Z axis. And there's my flag pole. Now I don't want it to kind of go into my flag, so maybe I'll go to my top view. And maybe just a little bit off kilter there so I can see where my flag is. And there we go, that looks about right. So now the flagpole is not intersecting with the flag. I'm going to go ahead and make that flagpole a collision object. So if the flag happens to fall down and doesn't go through the flagpole. So now if we simulate, it should do a pretty good job. But of course we want wind. Now wind is under, it's considered a force field. It doesn't really seem like a force field, but it is. It's applying a force. So I'm going to put my 3D cursor right where I want my wind to go. So I'm going to add it right about there. And we're going to go to add and force field and wind. Now wind looks kind of funny. It's 3 kind of hula hoops and an arrow sticking out of it. If I select something else, you can see, if my computer will let me, that is the wind object. So it's right now pointing up, which means the wind will be going upwards. I'm going to press R and then 90 from my front view so that the wind points at the flag. Now I don't want it to be pointing straight at it. I'm going to maybe go and put it right about there. and then rotate it from the top view to point it at the flag. Now right now, because we added the wind object, it has physics, and you can change the strength of the wind, you can change the noise of the wind to make it more kind of fluttery or gusty, and you can change the flow. I'm not really sure what flow is, but I do know that the strength is how strong the wind is, of course. So I'm going to go ahead and change that strength. Now right now 1 strength is very, very weak. It probably won't do anything to that flag. So I'm going to turn it up to about 100. It can go all the way up to about 1,000 or 2,000, I believe. Let's see if I can go, I'll just type in something really high to see how high it goes. Yeah, it only goes up to 1,000, so I'm going to try 100, and now we will simulate, and it should work pretty well. Now you can see it working, but because of the size of the flag, I kind of ignored scale in my scene. Because of the size of my flag, it's not really blowing the flag to be straight outwards. It is giving it some wind though. You can see that it's not falling straight down, and this section of the flag is being pushed out. So let's just turn the strength of the wind up. Let's try 3, actually we'll do 400. Let's see what happens. So Alt-A to simulate. And that seems to be working pretty well. There's a flag blowing in the wind. Now, just like any other cloth simulation, as soon as you get what you like, of course, because I don't have my cloth simulated, you can't, or selected, you can't see the blue line forming. But if I press escape and then select my flag, there is my simulation. It is blowing in the wind, and I can bake that, and that is wind. One more thing before I take off, you can have things block wind as well. If I right now go into my front view and let's add a plane, let's rotate it -90 degrees, let's make that plane really big by scaling it up. Right now you would think that that wind would be blocked by that plane, but if I go back to frame 0, select my cloth, and press Alt-A, it is not. Let's actually go, this is a good lesson. If I have a cloth cache, which is the current cache that's in that, it's not named right now. So under cloth cache, you can actually have and store different caches as long as you don't quit Blender. So if we're happy with this one, or we're not happy with this one, we can name it. I'll name this one first wind, and then I'll make a new cloth cache. And you see that as soon as I pressed the little plus button, it made a new cache and it switched to it so that my cache went away on my flag. If I go back up to first wind, and we went back to the beginning, I would think that it would play that original. Nope, it is not doing it again. So really, if you have a hard time getting rid of your cache, or it's not resimulating, it's just playing your old cache, you can always click on your current cache, make a new one, so it makes one right below, then click on your old one, and erase it, press the minus, and it'll erase that first one. In other words, if I create one called first, and it simulates, and I don't like that simulation, I can always press make a new one, then select first, and get rid of that old one, and that'll completely clear your cache. So right now, if I press Alt-A with my new fresh cache, the wind is still blowing, and that's because we haven't told this plane to collide or block the wind. Now, if I select that plane, and I'm going to actually give it a collision object, and you'll see that under the collision objects for that the collision options for that object, you can change the absorption for force fields, and that means that it'll actually absorb any forces that you have in your scene. So right now, because the wind is on that side of the force field, if I press Alt-A, it should... No, on the wind I also need to select absorption under the physics tab, so it'll actually account for objects that are absorbing its force. Let's go ahead and press Alt-A. And that obviously slowed down my simulation quite a bit, but I believe that the cloth will now no longer blow in the wind. It will just fall down. Nope, it's just falling down. One more thing about wind, it does look a little bit funny. even though you'd think that because I placed that wind directly in the path of the flag, that is what made the flag flutter. That is not the case. I can actually put that wind anywhere in my scene, and it'll blow wind in my scene along that entire direction as much as it is needed. So even though the wind is not anywhere near the flag anymore, if I press Alt A, the flag will still get blown in the wind, even though the wind is not anywhere near, not pointing. It's even past the flag. Okay, that's part 2. In part 3, we're going to talk about simulating clothing in character animation. Until then, I'll see you next time.